I think yesterday we had stopped at matching model. Okay, so here I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let us move on to the next model, that is Harvard model. Okay, so I just given a brief of Harvard model yesterday. So Harvard model basically is nothing but mutuality into all businesses. So they say that the employees, you take care of your employees take care of your business. That is what basically put forth into the Harvard model. Okay, so here so joining. And students, please do not forget to mark your attendance into Google Sheet. Okay, fine. Let us move on to the Harvard model. So here, Harvard model basically focuses on human, that is soft aspect of human resource management. It emphasizes basically on employee-employer relationship. Okay, and it also highlights the interest of different stakeholders. Now, who are the stakeholders? It is obviously the shareholders, the employees of the organization, the management members, right? The unions, the government, the community. All these are the stakeholders. So it sees to it that it take case of the interest of different stakeholders. Okay, and these stakeholders will take care of the business. That is what being explained more in the Harvard model. Okay, so model basically illustrates the influence of situational factors. Okay, so your interests keep on changing based on the situations. So here situation factors of stakeholders interest. Okay, the impact of it on the human resource policies, right? So situation is taken into consideration, and then the interest of the stakeholders is taken into consideration, and then they compare both, and then finally they go in for formulating the HRM policies. Okay. So here Harvard model was postulated by Baer et al. In 1984 at Harvard University. Okay. So author of the model also coined it in the map of HRM territory. So it is being also called as HRM territory. Okay. So it says that everything about HR is included in this particular model. Okay. Then the Harvard model acknowledges the existence of multiple stakeholders within the organization. So it sees to it that it values it respects the existence of different stakeholders within the organization as well as outside the organization. Okay, so this model basically stresses on the fact that employees, like any other shareholders, are equally important in influencing the organizational outcome. It says that if you want better profits, better goodwill, okay, better reputation of the organization, then you need to take care of your employees who are very important factor in the organization. Okay, so that is what it takes care of. And then moving on to the Harvard model here. So if you could see here, yesterday I have already shown stakeholders' interest and the situational factors. Now, stakeholder interest is nothing but again the various stakeholders. Situational factor is the characteristics of workforce. Okay, what would be the characteristics of workforce? What type of employees are there in your organization? The strategy of the business. What is the strategy of the business right now? And the conditions of the implementation of that particular strategy. Then the philosophy of management, exactly. What is the philosophy of management? What is the thought of management? Then labor market as of now, is it very low? Is it very high? Okay. Then unions, are they very strong? Are they very weak? Unions are very positive or negative? Then technological changes. Okay. Then laws and societal values, the changes in the laws, changes in the societal values. All these are various factors which affect the stakeholders' interest. So these factors affect the stakeholders' interest. Okay, and then these two factors, stakeholder interest and situational factors, do are taken into consideration and do affect the HRM policies. Okay, So what are the HRM policies? That is nothing but employee influence, okay, human resource flow, reward system, work system, all these are included in HRM policies like training, staffing, okay, performance management, reward, award, grievance handling. Everything is being put forth into human resource policy. So human resource policy choice as to what type of human resource policies to be made is based on stakeholders' interest and situational factors. Okay, and finally, when you put forth the policies, right, it influences the employees. Okay, it influences the human resource flow in the organization. Okay, it influences the reward and work systems, okay, in the organization. And then finally, the outcome comes in. Once these policies are implemented, you have the outcome. Okay, so that is nothing but committed workforce, competent workforce, congruence between the workforce, and then you bring cost effectiveness, that is reducing the cost of the organization and increasing the income of the organization, or if you could say bringing in more profits in the organization. Obviously, if these outcomes continue, long-term consequences would be well-being of the individual who are working in the organization as well as who are associated with the organization. Then organization will be very effective, efficient enough. Okay, and then society. It also takes care of the society. Okay, so many of the companies which we could see, they have adopted certain villages, they have adopted certain areas, they have adopted certain forest areas nearby and all those things, and they have developed. Okay, that is nothing but societal well-being. So Harvard model of HRM, if you could see here, everything about HR is being covered in this, and that's the reason it was being called as the HRM territory also. Okay. Then coming on to next, the outcomes consequently produce long-term and sustainable benefits. So outcomes, whatever are there, commitment, congruence, and all those things, they have produced long-term and sustainable benefits for the individuals, for the organization, and for the society. So this particular model is highly prescriptive. Okay, it is highly prescriptive model of HRM, which emphasizes a number of presumed long-term benefits. It is presumed. Okay, presumed long-term benefits of acting on stakeholders' interest and situational factors. So you have to act according to the stakeholders' interest and situational factors, frame the right policies, and then you have the outcome, and then you will be having the long-term benefits. Okay, that is the presumption which is there. Okay, assuming that there is a set of predetermined and superior human resource policy choices. So entirely the success of the organization entirely depends on the human resource policy choices. So if it is being made correctly, then 100% you have the better or long-term results. So matching and Harvard model are often compared and contrast in terms of their approaches to the use of human resource. Okay. Now coming on to next, while matching model entirely focuses on strategic resources aspect of human resource, the Harvard model entirely emphasizes on the human element, okay, of in the human resource formulation. So Harvard model, again, limitations, it doesn't explain the complex relation between strategic management and HRM. I explained it yesterday, right? So this model entirely proves to be descriptive rather than prescriptive. Okay, so it seems to be prescriptive, but basically it is very descriptive, and therefore does not predict a relationship between HR policies and outcomes. It is not very clear that if you have right HR policies in your organization, 100% you are going to achieve the outcomes. Okay, so that may not be very much, 100% be clear about that. Then going on to the next model, that is European model. So it is entirely based on the argument that European organizations are constrained at both international, okay, and national level by national culture and legislation. Okay, so European model entirely, it is nothing but it is about the European organizations. So it is entirely based on the argument, okay, that European organizations are constrained at both international, that is European unions, and national by the national culture and legislation. So they also constrain. They are also constrained at the organization level by patterns of ownership, and at the HRM level by trade unions involvement and consultative arrangement. So a lot of constraints are there. If you could see here, so international constraints are European unions, and national constraints are culture and legislation of that particular nation. Okay, and then again, if you could see at the organizational level, Okay, pattern of ownership, who owns it, right? And HRM level by trade unions, what are the trade unions in the organization, how many trade unions are there in the organization, the involvement of trade unions in the organization, and consultative arrangement, how well you consult with the trade unions and how well they go according to your decisions, right? All these are various constraints which are put forth into European model. So all the constraints need to be considered for forming the HR system. So European model says that you have to identify the constraints and you have to see to it that you fulfill the needs of the other stakeholders in the organization, and then you can formulate the HR system. That is what European model says. Okay. Then you have 5P contextual model. Okay, so this model allows organization a number of different means to achieve the same result. Organization may follow different means to achieve the same results. This is due to existence of linkage between external environment, that is context, social environment, technological, political, legal, and competitive, and internal organizational context. External context and the internal context. So it says that there are a lot of linkages between external and internal context. So internal context is nothing but again culture, structure of the organization, leadership, patterns of the organization, task, technology, and business output in the organization. So contextual module says that certain times you are supposed to use matching model, certain times you are supposed to use the Harvard model based on the influence of external environment and the internal environment. So linkage will determine content of the organization's HRM. Okay. Then you have 5P model, that is it links with itself with the 5 P's, that is 5 human resource activities: philosophy, policy, program, practice, and processes. Okay, with strategic needs. So these activities are interrelated. Okay, the activities are very much interrelated. They are very much significant in achieving organizational needs. Okay, and the field of IHRM becomes substantially more important in early 1990s due to globalization and accelerated changes in the economic, social, legal, technological, and working conditions. Okay. So this is what the 5P model says that. So it says that the field of IHRM is substantially more important, okay, due to globalization and all of the things, like IHRM has got its own importance because of the changes which have been going on into economic, social, legal, technological, and workforce conditions. Okay. So let us move on to 5P's model of SHRM. Okay, that is strategic human resource management. First P is philosophy. Philosophy is nothing but statement of how organization values and treats employees, essentially culture of the organization. So you need to have right organization culture framed in your organization, right? So they should be, as I say, the person cultural fit within the organization. Then only the employees will stay for a longer time happily in your organization. So you need to have the right philosophy, management philosophy, which is being adopted by the organization. Okay, and see to it that. You just treat the employees well, okay, and you frame the values well so that the employees are being justified of that particular values and accept readily. Okay, essentially the culture of the organization. Then you have the policies. Okay, so policies is nothing but the expression of shared values and guidelines for action on employee related business issues. So policies is nothing but the HR policies which are being framed, which is the shared values. That means you are sharing the policies with your employees. Okay, policies are again nothing but the values which are there in the organization. You share the policies and values with your employees, and you also give the guidelines for action on employee related business issues. Okay, so that's what we say policies. Then you have programs. It is nothing but the coordinated and strategized approach to initiate, disseminate, and sustain strategical organizational change efforts necessitated by strategic business needs. I hope you all know about the programs, right? Programs are nothing but something which is very much coordinated with each other, strategized, okay, with a strategized approach. A program is something which is initiated, disseminated, that means the duties are being disseminated, and then the strategic organizational change or efforts, or it is being necessitated by strategy. There are a lot of changes which will be going on in the business. Okay, and the programs also keep on changing based on the strategic business needs. That is what we see programs. Okay. Now let us come to next. That is practice. Okay. So when you speak about practice, it is nothing but HR practices. When I speak here programs, it is nothing but HR programs, right? So it keeps on changing based on the strategic business need. So HR practices basically motivate behavior that allows individual to assume roles consistent with organizational strategic objective. So here there are three categories of roles. One is leadership, managerial, and operational. Leadership is a person who guides, directs, okay, and manager is a person who just implements it, okay, and operational where it is being monitored and see to it that whatever loopholes are there that is being covered. So practice is basically HR practices. It practices is motivating behavior. Okay, it practices motivating behavior, which makes the individual assume that the organization is my organization and I need to achieve this particular objectives of the organization. Okay, so he'll be achieving the objectives of the organization, maybe in a role of a leader, manager, or a operational. Okay. Then you have processes, that is a continuum of participation by all employees. So here in this process, we have the all employees being implementing the objectives and all those things, right? And there is continuum of participation in the specific activities to facilitate formulation and implementation of other activities. Okay, so this is nothing but 5P model of SHR. Okay, then moving on next to drivers of internationalization of business. Why the businesses go international? What are the drivers for internationalization of business? First driver of internationalization of business is, okay, one is globalization of market. Now here, when we speak about globalization of market, it entirely refers to the merging of national market into one huge global marketplace. Okay, so here global is entire globe is a marketplace. You are selling your product to the entire globe. Okay, so selling internationally is easier due to falling barriers to cross border trade. There are a lot of falling barriers to cross border trade, so it becomes very easy to sell internationally. Okay, so company does not need to have a big size or whatever it is. Even if you are an agricultural farmer, you can just go into selling your products worldwide. Okay, and you can become a multinational giant. Okay, and you need it is not necessary that you have to be a multinational giant to just do the business overseas. But yes, if you have the right product with you, you can do the business. That is what we say falling barriers to cross border trade. So it is important to offer standard product to the world, right? So here significant differences still exist between national market, like consumer taste preferences. A lot of differences will be there, cultural differences will be there, language symbol differences will be there, consumer taste differences will be there. Okay, so these differences basically require marketing strategies in order to match the conditions in the country. That is the first driver of internationalization of business. One is globalization of market. So here, for example, if you take Walmart, KFC, McDonald's, all these are various examples which have examples of the companies which have gone global. Okay, and they have adopted their products according to the needs of and preferences of the customers of that particular country. Okay, that is globalization of market. Then you have globalization of production. So here, basically it refers to sourcing of goods and services from locations around the world. So here you are going to source the goods and services from locations around the world to take advantage of national differences in the cost and quality of factor of production. So basically most of the call centers, ITs, BPOs, KPOs are being established in India. Now why they are being established in India? Because you have very cheap labor in India. Okay, Indian labor is you need not pay too much of high salary. Okay, so that's the reason what they do is they put forth their companies here. Okay, so what they are doing is they are globalizing their production. Okay, so that's what we say here, globalizing their services. Okay, so here globalization of production refers to sourcing. Okay, identifying the various raw materials, identifying the goods, services located worldwide. Okay, and by understanding the national differences, basically the cost and quality of the factors of production, and taking the factors of production from various countries. So this idea is to compete more effectively, offering a product with good quality and low cost. So that is the main mantra of this globalization of production: good quality and low cost. You're going to get the best quality from around the world, raw materials from around the world, and then produce it, and then you just sell it across. Okay, and you are going to incur less cost for that. For example, Nike is considered one of the leading marketers of athletic shoes, okay, and apparels on the world. The company has some overseas factories where has achieved a super production with low cost. So company has some of the overseas factories wherein it has achieved a super production with low cost. Unfortunately, Nike has been a target of protest and persistent accusations that its products are made in sweatshops with poor working conditions. That is a problem with a Nike company which happened in. Okay, so there are a lot of poor conditions and the products are made in sweatshop, and you are going to torture the employees and you are going to get the work done from the employees. That was not accepted, and then a lot of protest and persistence was there. Okay, the company had signaled a commitment to improve working conditions. So then the company went in for committing that we are going to improve the working conditions, but in spite of the fact, the attack continues. Okay, so that is one of the problem with Nike. Okay, so when you go for globalization of production, there are a lot of other factors which come in as a barrier to it. So you need to see to it that you respect the culture of that particular country, you respect the employees, satisfy the need of the employees, satisfy the need of the people of that particular country, and then see to it that you look into everything and then finally think of globalizing of production, because the main motto is minimizing the cost. Okay, minimizing the cost and getting the best quality. Then you have the next driver of internationalization of business, that is falling barriers to trade and investment. There are a lot of barriers which have been taken back by the government when it comes to international trade. Okay, to enable firms to view the world as their market. Okay, so here the barriers to trade and investment also allows firms to base production at the optimal location for that activity. That's what I said. That is nothing but globalization of production again. Okay, so thus firm might design a product in one country, produce a component parts in two other countries, assemble the product in another country, and then export the finished product around the world. Okay, that is what is the advantage of falling barriers to trade and investment. So lowering of trade barriers basically has facilitated globalization of production, then utilizing the competence all over the world, okay, utilizing the technological competence all over the world, and then getting the best product. Okay, so evidence also suggests that FDI, foreign direct investment, is playing an increasing role in global economy. Then coming on to the next drivers of internationalization of business, that is technological innovation. Okay, a lot of technological changes are happening with the wink of an eye. Okay, so it has achieved a lot of advancement in communication, information processing, transportation, data analytics, technology. Okay, including internet, that is World Wide Web and all those things, right? Lot of changes, lot of innovations have happened. Beside the innovations have occurred in the field of transportation technology also. Supply chain management, transportation technology, everywhere there are a lot of innovations, there are a lot of technological things put forth. So softwares are there, right? So these all things bring in for the drive to do the business international. Okay, that is internationalization of business. So you are going to adopt the technology from various countries, and then you're going to implement it and you're going to get the best out of it. Okay? Then you have next, that is different settings of international human resource management. So first setting is domestic operations. Okay. So when I speak about domestic operation, firm offers the product and services that are designed to primarily serve consumers in the domestic market only. Example, law firms. So Indian law firms will be serving only India. So that is what we say domestic operations. So operations will be conducted within the country, as well as the product also will be within the country. That is domestic operations. Okay. Then export operations. Export operations, products and services opened to the market in other countries also. Okay, you are going to export the products and services to the other countries, but production facility may remain in the same country. Production facility will be in one country, and you are going to produce it, and you are going to export the product to various countries. Okay, so here that is what we call it as export operations. Okay, so it provides basically, if I take about one particular thing, that is Canada McCain Foods. Okay, so here the it provides sales force with skills and motivation basically to succeed their foreign markets. Okay, then coming on to next different setting of international human resource management, that is subsidiaries or joint ventures. We all know what are subsidiaries, what is joint venture. It is nothing but operational facilities. Okay, you are going to partner with another person or another country or another organization. So here some operational facilities, okay, like part assembly, etc., and all those things are physically moved to other countries. Okay, so there the subsidiary is there. Subsidiary will be taking care of the other part of that particular production. So corporate headquarters in the home country has high control over foreign operations. It provides expatriates and local employees with knowledge and skill to succeed in the foreign market. That's what we say joint venture. You just get into JV with one particular person. They will be doing work on your behalf, and they will be giving a product to you. In the same way, subsidiaries, you have branch offices who will be doing the part of the production. Okay, so that's what we say the subsidiary or joint ventures. Then you have multinational operations. Okay, so here they are much more prevalent international dispersion of production and service provision facilities. So here multinational operations are basically they have international operations. Okay, dispersion of production is there, dispersion of services provision facilities are there. Decentralization of decision making is more prevalent. Now, if you can see here, subsidiary or joint ventures, there is no decentralization. Okay, export operation, there is no decentralization. But in multinational operations, there is decentralization of decision making. Okay, that is more prevalent. But major decisions are being taken by the home country only, parent country only. So expatriates still primarily manage foreign facilities. The stages of internationalization is being taken care by the expatriates. Then you have transnational operations, that is little allegiance to the firm's country of origin. Okay, so here large scale decentralization of decision making happens here. In multinational operations, decisions are being taken by the host country only, but still major decisions will be held by the headquarters. Here in transnational, entirely the decentralization is being made of decision making. Dominant role of expatriate here, that is the parent country national, is being removed. Each business unit is entirely independent. They have the freedom to make the decisions and implement their own HRM policies and practices. That is what transnational operations say. These are the various settings of international human resource management. The development of international human resource management, how basically it developed, what are the forces of change? First force of change was global competition. Okay, so level of competition were increasing with the spread of diversity of international business. Okay, as a result of it, many firms from developed nations and transnational transitional economies became more involved into global activities. That is one of the first development. Then they went in for mergers, acquisitions, and alliances across the countries. Okay, and this trend continued till the formation of strategic alliances. And then they went in for organizational restructuring. Okay, entire restructuring of the organization. Okay, and then so what they did here, they changed the entire decision making process. Entire restructuring of the staff was being done. Entire restructuring of the operations were being done, and they changed in the a lot of changes were brought in the environment of the firm. That is organizational restructuring. And then you have the fourth force of change, that is advancement in technology and communication. Lot of advancement has happened, or rapid advancement has happened into internet in various ways, 3G, 4G, 2G, like this. Lot many things have come and lot many changes have happened. Okay, so here what happens is it also brings in facilitation to virtual teams who will be working in various countries. Okay, so that's what we could see here, development of international human resource management. Now coming on to strategic human resource management, it entirely begins with identification of strategic needs. So HR policies or strategic human resource management is framed based on the policies of the or strategies of the organization. So employee participation is very critical. So what the employees do, they link strategy and HR practices, right? So here, when they make or link the strategy and HR practices, the employees understand why these practices are very much required and try to successfully implement those practices. Then strategic HR basically depends on systematic and analytical mindset. So a lot of systematic and analytical mindset should be there. You need to see to it that you solve the problem, sort out the problems, okay, as and when it occurs. Okay, then see to it that the strategy, whatever you have adopted, doesn't change. Then corporate HR department can have impact on organizational effort to launch strategic incentives. Okay, so here corporate HR department can have a lot of impact on organizational efforts to launch strategic initiatives. Okay, then coming on to business strategies, right? So business strategies, we have a number of business strategies which are being developed. One was domestic business strategy. So here, new products and services for the domestic market is being introduced first. Foreign market and international markets managerial skills largely irrelevant. So when it comes to domestic market, foreign markets, and the international managerial skill is not relevant. So here you are going to produce the new products and services, basically keeping into consideration the need of the customers or consumers in the domestic market. Okay. Then you have international, that is competition increases when we go international. So companies expand across the borders or country borders. Okay, and then the hierarchical structure is very much flattened. Okay, then you have structural and cultural dominance. Too much of dominance, cultural dominance will be there when you are entering another country. Okay, and then first home country managers abroad as expatriates are being given first preference. That is international strategy. And then you have multinational strategy, that is less cost. Okay, so cost will be very less, standardized product according to the needs of that particular country. Okay, worldwide line of business, your business is set up in entire world, decisions made by the people from wide range of cultures. So whatever decisions are there regarding the product, production, services, whatever it is, marketing, HR, everything is being made by the various people within that particular country. Okay, by the employees of that particular country or key employees of that particular country. Okay, then values of headquarters will be into dominance. You have to follow the culture and values of the headquarters, keeping into mind that yes, in spite of following the values of headquarters, you are still going to make a product based on the needs of that entire country where it is being operated. Then senior managers need to understand the whole business environment. That is very much required into multinational. Please understand, students, domestic for local market, international. Okay. So here what you are going to do is you are going to put forth the products to the national international market. From national you are going international. Multinational to various other countries. Okay, then you have transnational. So it is entire globe. So global competition exists. Okay, and then identical products are distributed worldwide. Identical products are there which are distributed worldwide. There is no much change in the product. Okay, like if you take Google, that is a transnational company. Okay, transnational strategy. So it research and development is taken as the first priority here. It as identical products are distributed worldwide, firms become less hierarchically structured. There is no too much of structure, too much of hierarchy and all those things. Okay, so people work into virtual organization setting. Okay, then transnational human resource strategies are being developed. Okay, so that's what we speak about business strategies. Then moving on to evolution of multinational enterprises. So multinational or transnational enterprises is one that engages in FDI, foreign direct investment, and owns or controls value adding activities in more than one country. Okay, in practice, most multinational enterprises are nationally controlled but internationally owned and managed. Owning it and managing it is on that particular country which is being hosting, but entire control will be with the headquarters of the parent country. Okay, then although the extent and form of their cross-border equity and non-equity participation varies greatly between industries, firms, and even within the same firm over time. A lot of variations will be there when it comes to the extent and form of their cross-border equity and non-equity of participation. Okay, so a lot of differences will be there. Cultural differences will be there. A lot of various other differences will be there. It will bring in a lot of problems when it comes to evolution of multinational enterprises. Then how is a company classified as multinational enterprise? When it has subsidiary in foreign countries. When the company has subsidiary in foreign countries, it is called as an MNC. Or when the operations in the number of countries, various operations are there in number of countries, it is called as MNC. Then high proportionate assets in or from revenue from global operations. Too much of high assets or revenue is from global operations rather than domestic operations, then you call it as multinational company. The stakeholders are from different countries. People who hold the shares of the organization or who are the employees in the organization are from different countries. They work under one roof. Again, that speaks about the multinational culture. Okay, so here IHRM strategies will be looking into the next class. Okay. So here, my dear students, still here, is it understood or any doubts? I've left purposely IHRM strategies because I want you people, I want to give an assignment to you based on this IHRM strategies so that we can have a discussion on it. Okay. Any doubts still here, students? Module 1, any doubts? Uma, any doubts? Uma? Uma is there? Uma, are you there?
Yes,
Please
ma'am.
unmute yourself,
Yes,
Uma.
ma'am.
Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Am I going too fast? Deepika,
Yes,
am
ma'am.
I going too fast, Deepika?
No, ma'am. No.
Okay, Akshata, Kadate,
Yes, ma'am.
is it being understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts, my dear students? Please, if you have any doubts, ask me now itself. Don't keep quiet. If you're not understanding, please clearly tell me that you are not understanding. I will try to go a bit slow and make you understand, but don't sit quiet. Okay, so shall I move to the next module, second module?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So module 2, basically it speaks about strategies for international growth. Okay, then exploiting global integration, right? And then becoming locally responsive and managing alliances and joint ventures. These are the these are the four headings under which this module 2 is considered. Okay, then coming on to the first one, strategies for international growth. First strategy for international growth. If you want your business to go international or want to have international growth, first strategy would be exporting. Okay, exporting is nothing but maintaining the facility within a home country. That means entire production facility is within the home country, and you are going to sell your goods or transfer your goods and services abroad for sale in the foreign market. That is nothing but exporting. Okay, then you have a lot of examples are being given here. Reliance Industries exports oil and gas to Europe, Africa, and America. Okay. Then you have Tata Steels, which exports a large number of steel products like HR coils, ferrochrome, wires, and much more to the countries like United States of America, European Unions, Jordan, Qatar, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Middle East, and Korea. Sun Pharma Industries has its exports into pharmaceutical exports into United States of America, right? Rajesh Exports from Bangalore. They are the global leader in gold business. Okay, they are major exporter of gold jewelry. Okay, around the world, and basically the company exports its product to more than 60 countries. Okay, the company has recently acquired largest gold refinery. Okay, Valcami, which has a lot of credibility in the overseas. So still more examples are Tata Motors, Vardhaman, okay, Textiles International Lace Trade Center, Bajaj International Private Limited, Arvind Mills, okay, and one more example is Kiran Gems Private Limited, which is situated in Mumbai, which is the largest exporter of the gems and the diamonds and even jewelry into countries like US, Hong Kong, and UAE. And they are being called as the top manufacturers of diamond in the entire world. Kiran Gems Private Limited. Okay. So here, this is what we speak about exporting. Now, next strategy for international growth is licensing. Okay. So here, what happens is a firm that is a licensor in one country giving other domestic or foreign firms license to the right, that is right to use a patent, trademark, technology, production process or product in return of payment of royalty or fee. Now here when I speak about licensing strategy, you have something with you, okay, you have a product with you, or you have a a technology with you, you have a production process with you which is very unique, and you have patented it, okay, and what you are going to, you have taken the license for that, and you give permission for other domestic or foreign firms to use that particular patent or use that particular trademark, technology, production process or product in return of payment of some royalty to the licensed organization. That is nothing but licensing strategy. The US and Canadian book publishers allow translation. That is what is the strategy which is being put forth here. Pepsi and Coca-Cola with bottling company distributions, they have taken the licensing of bottling and they give the patent to the others to do that. Okay, and then apart from that, we could see Coca-Cola licensing started from brand protection. So licensing started with brand protection. There was a case which I'll be explaining in next few classes. Okay, so they went in for brand protection. They took a patent for brand protecting their brand name, and then company licensed out a brand in order to protect against other companies launching Coca-Cola branded products in other categories. So now it's a great example of how to leverage a common brand affinity and nostalgia. So with the Coca-Cola brand, you have n number of other products also which are being produced, but it is being trademarked as Coca-Cola. John Degree is a common example again. You need to take into consideration how the company was able to leverage its dealer network. Okay, John Degree has its dealer network. Same with Harley Davidson, you have a dealer network. You have only few dealers who can sell the Harley Davidson bikes. Okay, and they have license for that, and they have to pay the royalty for using it. Okay, so like this, my dear students, a lot of licensing strategies which is there for going international. Now again you have something called as franchising. So there is a difference between licensing and franchising. Okay, what is the difference between licensing and franchising? So governing by, so franchising is being governed by security laws, whereas licensing is being governed by the contract law. Okay, so registration basically for franchising it is required, for licensing it is not required. Okay, then afterwards coming on to next, territory rights offered to franchisee, whereas it is not offered to the franchisee licensee. Licensee can sell similar licenses and products in same area. Okay, they cannot again switch to other areas. Support and training, it is being provided by the franchisor, whereas in licensing it is not being provided. Royalty payment in both, yes. Then use of trademark and logo, it is being retained by franchisor and used by franchisee. And here in licensing, it can be again relicensed based on the permission of the licensor. Then examples of franchising: McDonald's, Subway, 7-Eleven, Dunkin' Donuts are the examples of franchising. Examples of licensing: it is nothing but Microsoft Office is the example of licensing. So control, when it comes to control, franchisor exercises control over franchisee. That means all the decisions are being made by the franchisor. Here in licensing, licensor does not have control over the licensing. So if you could see, many people have Microsoft Office, which is being not a genuine one, and all those things. It is being downloaded and all those things. So these are the problems which happen when it comes to licensing. Now coming on to the next strategy, that is franchising strategy again. Okay, so here, what is this franchising? It is nothing but parent organization, that is franchisor, granting other company or individuals, that is franchisees, the right to use its trademark name and to produce and sell its goods and services. That is nothing but franchising. The companies franchising in India are McDonald's, Holiday Inn, Lian Real Estate, Dixit Chicken, Eurokids International Limited, okay, Tango, Fresh Fruits, Ice Cream, Pizza Corner, Kazaria, Apparels Private Limited, Gitanjali Jewelries, BG Clearing Systems, all these are various franchises in India. Then you have the next strategy, that is alliance strategy. Okay, alliance strategy is nothing but agreeing with other companies to pool, okay, to bring together physical, financial, and human resource to achieve a common goal. You get into alliance with various companies or various institutions to get the resources which is required for producing a particular product. Okay, that is nothing but alliance strategy. So Ford and Eddie Bauer, okay, Ford Explorer, Eddie Bauer edition, premier leather seats and other luxury features throughout the vehicle are being alliance from others, okay, other companies, production facilities, okay, from other countries. Then Spotify and Uber, again they are nothing but alliance. You get into alliance with various people who are having their own cabs or who are having their own cars, and then you just run out your business. Google, then Luxottica, okay, then HP, Disney, Starbucks, okay, all these are various strategies of alliance. Reason for alliance: low cost, okay, low share and lower cost of higher risk is being shared, cost is being shared, okay, technology also is being shared. That is one of the major advantage of alliance. Then basically desire to learn another firm's technology or advantage or benchmarking and all those things. Then desire to participation in evolution of competitive activities in growing global industries, just going global and just utilizing the global workforce, utilizing the global competence, utilizing the global technology. That is the major reason for alliances. Then you have the next one, that is multi-domestic strategy. Okay, that is nothing but adjusting the products and services and practices to individual countries or regions. That is multi-domestic. You are multinational, but still you adapt to the domestic market. That is nothing but multi-domestic strategy. For example, Fritos, Campbell Foods, McDonald's again is major example for multi-domestic strategy, wherein in 1955, McDonald's opened its first restaurant in Des Plaines, okay, Illinois. Today, 2008, it operates all over 31. I've just taken the data of 2008. Now it's again it's almost 50,000 plus. Okay, into 119 countries on 6 continents, employing more than 1.5 million people all over the world. So, McDonald's is a multi-domestic company which adjusts its culture as well as its taste and its foods to the host country. Okay. Then you have the next strategy, that is global strategy. Again, it is nothing but it stresses on worldwide consistency. That means entire world the product is same. Okay, standardized. There is no change in the product. Okay, and low relative. Okay, so Black and Decker subsidiary manufacturing certain parts of families of production in one country. That is what we could say. And then best example for this global strategy is Google, which is consistent worldwide. There is a standardized app for Google, right? Everything, anywhere in the world you go, you find the same Google, right? That's what we say global strategy. Okay. So need for multinational global strategy we'll be looking into the next class. I hope till here it is being understood, my dear students. Any questions are there? Please let me know. Any questions? Any questions, students?
No, ma'am.
Okay, great. So we'll just move on quickly to the next class. Okay, in the whenever it is being scheduled, and then I hope you all are writing your assignments. Please start writing your assignments in a piece of paper, and then submit it whenever it is being told. Is it clear?
Ma'am, the strategies are for the assignment.
Sorry.
Strategies.
No. Assignment 1 is the previous year question paper, my dear.
Okay, ma'am.
Assignment 2 is again the previous year question paper. 2 previous year's question paper you are not supposed to pick. You are going to solve the question papers. Put it as assignment 1 and assignment 2. That's it. Your assignment is done. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And semi